niece is on vacation. So I believe Ms. Denise.
So this evening we have the high school landscaping committee presentation, and just to give you a quick summary, if you recall when we started the pads and canopies project here at the high school, we were in the process of putting a canopy in the front entrance to the auditorium, and as a result of preparing for that and assessing how to put that in properly, it was so determined that it would interfere with the tree, the large, I don't know what type of tree it was.
Locust.
A large locust tree that we had in the front that not only provided some beauty but also shade, and was something that was very challenging for us as a school district to have to take down. But unfortunately, we needed to do that, otherwise risk losing the tree as part of the excavation and digging that needed to take place. As such, we decided that we would engage students within the high school to work with members of the faculty and administration to make recommendations to the board as to how we might be able to reclaim that area and possibly improve the beautification of the front of the school in terms of its landscape needs. So here this evening, high school principal Dr. Jamie Brownings is here with a team of folks, and we'd like to introduce that team.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for having us tonight. I have 5 very special guests with me here. Abigail Thornton, Teresa Otto, our 2 student representatives from our group. We had about 10 to 12 students who were involved. Denise McCrae, Chrissy Simpkins, and Carl Kralik are faculty and staff advisors through this project. They have been instrumental in driving everything from brainstorming ideas, researching products, and putting everything together. So the students are going to take us through the presentation, and then the staff at the end, if they have any additional comments, will add them, and then we'll be here for any questions you might have. So thank you.
So as Dr. Gavini's mentioned, my name is Teresa Otto.
And I'm Abby.
We are both seniors here at the high school, and today we have our proposal for the beautification of the front of the building. So to start off, this is just an overview of all of our committee members. In bold are the members who had pretty much the largest impact in brainstorming and putting us all together. Benjamin Cunningham and Grant Baker couldn't be here tonight, but they were super influential in helping develop this.
And of course, our main purpose today of being here is to beautify the entrance, the main entrance that is to our school. And we really wanted to create more of that welcoming aesthetic and like a pretty coloring and entranceway that gives more light to the whole school. Another factor within that was like community seating. We want more areas outside for kids to be able to sit, whether that's just waiting for their rides or like after sports. And as you see in the diagram, we kind of wanted one area to be covered more, as in the gazebo, so that there's protection from the elements if kids still were outside waiting for something, like as in just arrive, like I said. And I think another part of this is also outdoor teaching. If teachers have more of the option to be outside and there's seating for them there's that kind of idea that we could take a class out and just be outside for the day. Kind of again, when we had the seating outside earlier this school year, we had those big tents set up with seats and everything, and that was a big hit with a lot of teachers. So even if it's on a smaller scale, it would still be a great option to have, I think, for the high school. And then the other portion is STEM engagement. I myself work in a hydroponic farm, and I'm developing that course this year. And I think introducing more ideas that are along sustainability and kind of being green spaces and just engaging with students in order to create more of like a friendly area in that sense, so that it's not only STEM, it's building their careers, it's building their experience, it's giving them volunteer hours like us. We gave a lot of our time to kind of develop all of this after school, so it would be really nice to kind of see that grow and have other students be able to take that on when we leave, since we're seniors. And again, as seniors and kind of going to college, we leaving some sort of message of kind of sustainability to our entranceway is something that we love to kind of leave.
So, just to give you a picture, this is currently the front of our building. It's a little bit bland, especially since it's missing a tree. Some of the grass in there is dead.
And the idea is just to add color to the area and kind of just that friendlier space, something pleasing to look at. And another portion here, I just want to introduce like why I'm here. Again, that STEM engagement is a big part of my life. I'm going into marine biology, so I think kind of like introducing STEM for all kids on that level of volunteering is really important. And like with this project, it's kind of like I have so much that I'm able to add, but what could other students do in future years and maintaining it, caring for it, getting clubs involved in it, that type of thing.
My resume is not quite as extensive as Abby's, but on a personal note, one summer, I think I was maybe 13 or 14 years old. I was looking at our garden in our side yard, and it was just a pile of dirt at that point, and it had a lot of flooding and all that. So I looked at it, and I said, well, since we went on a trip to Colonial Williamsburg, why not make a garden that's based off of that style? So we took all the measurements, we got all the materials we needed, and up on the screen is a picture of our garden with all the flowers and veggies and all sorts of things that can grow on a bunch of different plants. This is our timeline. So at the beginning of the year, there was an email sent out saying, hey, any students who want to volunteer to be a part of this committee, come on down to the LGI, and we met, and we went to go see the front of the school building, just to kind of get an idea of what physical space we were working with. And then over the winter, November, December, January, we started brainstorming and thinking of what we would want to see out there. And then in January and February, Mr. Kralik taught his classes CAD drafting, and his students produced renderings of the front of the building with ideas, with some of our ideas and ideas of their own. And we chose Grant Baker's draft, which I think you all have a copy of. And now we are here presenting to you. So this is our existing open space. So we have some bushes along the edge of the main entrance, and we have a pretty big tree there. But other than that, it's just open grass space. And this is Grant Baker's project.
So this is kind of everything that you can see on the diagram, but in words. So we plan to have those different paved areas kind of connecting all the walkways of where we have existing. And then the two main circles, in fact, would be like more smooth brick and kind of one having that Methacton logo, adding the personalization. And then the smaller circle would be the one that we want to have some sort of gazebo or covering over top of. And then the solar lighting was something that we really like the added detail of in case people are out there walking after a school event. If they want to go outside and it's lighted, it's not like something that's hard to walk on. And then the planters, we really like the idea of a self-watering planter. It's something that we have minimal care for. Just in the hot season, spring or summer, we have to water it every 2 weeks. And that's something that can be easily done by the maintenance crew of the high school, or in fact, the club. We get some volunteers to do that. And we really wanted some added colors and details, which is the winterberry bushes, or another very similar species of that type of leaf, along the back, behind everything, under the windows, pardon me. And then birdhouses would also be set up to some degree in that area to kind of encourage more like of that pretty space, some wildlife, that type of thing.
All right. Up in front of you is an overview of our estimated costs. We are looking at $56,985 plus the labor.
Anything else to add?
If you could go back to the drawing, that would kind of point out some of the stuff. Yeah. So you guys can do it. I mean, there's the two circles. One has an M on it, which would be a great photo op, and also a meet at the end, kind of so need a flagpole and have your meeting at the end.
And then the fact that it's outside of the auditorium entrance, if there's any, plays that, you know, have a intermission, that people can come out and sit out there during that time period, and just gather and go back in after the intermission. And then that little connecting the circles just kind of made it come full circle. That was just a nice idea from the entrance to maybe a covered portion in that small little circle for students.
It would allow people from the auditorium entrance to the main entrance, instead of having to walk straight across. And, the circle on the right is the one that have the canopy on it.
The last thing to add would be, we tried to match the greenery, so it's very hot out there when the sun is beating down on you. So we added a few shade trees in, the same kind of tree that we currently have on campus, so we would match the aesthetic. And then we added a few additional, as the students mentioned, some additional winterberry bushes or similar one that doesn't have berries, so the kids don't throw them at each other. But that's pretty much it.
Thank you very much.
I'm sure we all have similar questions, but let's not go first. First of all, thank you. Thank everybody here for coming and everyone else involved. It's beautiful, it's wonderful. I'm glad we're thinking of doing something. I just was curious about if there's any thought or any idea to a plan B, just in case. Is there a plan B just in case? Or is this really what we worked up? And that's fine if that's what, this is really it.
So we kind of just did a let's shoot for the stars.
Okay.
As a let's start somewhere. So that's our one and only.
Okay.
However, we certainly can scale things back. We certainly are looking for the input from the board to see what you guys think, so that it really is a communal effort of what we're putting forth for the front of the building.
And I think the idea of we have to add greenery, even though we took down one tree, it doesn't mean we just have to replace it with one tree. So I don't want anyone to think that's where I'm thinking. And I'm not opposed to the papers, but I would also imagine that comes into the good old porous, and I'm gonna say these words wrong, the amount in,
It's not impervious.
no, it's not impervious.
But that's between.
Okay, I was curious, because I know I just did a big project, and it was either a basin or pavers, or we couldn't do the stamped concrete. Let me ask that, the pavers, is stamped concrete, that's what I was more getting at, is that not an option due to certain things, or?
So we defer to our in-house expert, Mr. Jones.
Okay, okay, great.
We met with him and Dr. Zerby a few weeks ago, just to kind of go through things, and they had some great ideas and things that we hadn't thought of. When we built the idea of the pavers, it was based off of, Christy had seen in Unionville Shopping Center, pavers of, Audubon Shopping Center,
Right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's kind of what, there's the example of that. That's kind of what got us thinking pavers and kind of the visualization of this could be something cool for us, and kind of that's where we went with that. We did not research stamped concrete though.
And I ask that only because I love the M idea, and I do love the need at the M, and I do think pavers, I will just say pavers make me nervous for a couple reasons, and I'm not an in-house expert, so please take this with a grain of salt. The upkeep with pavers, the sand in between, and depending, I know pavers have gotten a lot better than they used to be with the weeds and everything else. I just know from a project, a pretty big project, maybe not as big as this, but pretty big project I did, stamped concrete was more cost effective, but it also affected some other things, like we had to get a basin if we did that. I didn't know, I do know it's more cost effective, I don't know how doable it is. I didn't know if pavers could be the one and stamped concrete to the rest, or if maybe not, that it doesn't even matter, I don't want to nitpick. But because the pavers are the biggest expense, and that they do kind of go, like I know we need to get our pavers somewhat fixed a little bit already, that's not to anyone's fault, but, so that's just my only hesitation.
Yeah, I think what we want to be able to do is, this was, the students did and the staff did a fabulous job in bringing us this concept. We likely to have someone who is a landscape engineer of some sort come in and say, well, here are a number of ways that you can accomplish your outcome that you like. So, for example, there may be, impervious or pervious pavers. There's all sorts of different options. The stamped concrete could be one, and there could be a combination of things that gets us to an end result where we can take cost and aesthetics and maintenance all into account to get the best product possible. I think that just one of the things that we have to also do is we got to get this concept evaluated from a safety and security perspective. That's one thing we have to have that conversation about. When you put trees up in front of the building, or there's we need a security expert to say, hey, this is good, bad, or you might want to think differently about where you actually put the tree and how many trees and how dense you make the situation so that it becomes a welcoming environment, it becomes an aesthetically pleasing environment, but it doesn't create additional challenges for us.
And then as far as timeline, I mean, I know you're seniors, but that's not, but are we hoping to get some kind of approval this school year, work this summer? You don't really do some work in the summer, like what, because I know the board, and I don't want to speak for everyone, but I would imagine the board's all for creating a space there, creating some kind of space above and beyond just replacing a tree. I just didn't know where we were timeline-wise.
I think the most important thing in terms of the timeline is the students' thoughts and concept, and we need to really put it in the hands of a landscape engineer or architect or whatever they're called, and allow them, and as well as bounce off the safety people and say, okay, what is the likelihood and what's the best end result plan of this, taking all these things into consideration. And then from that perspective, knowing where we land with the final drawing, as per se. If we land in June with the final drawing, it might be difficult for us to get anything done this summer. It might be something slated for the following summer, or certainly this type of work could possibly be done in September and October. It's not really interfering with any operation of the school. So it's hard for me to say what the timeline is until we probably get to the drawing that the board is most comfortable with in terms of all the overall aspects, and then obviously the cost as well.
So so the next step might be, this is our ideal, like you said, to a landscape architect or whoever's in charge next. And what can we do as close to this as possible? And then also with the hardscape, what is our most cost effective, and water and all those other things, not just cost effective, but just, land maintenance.
Because they do make they went this direction, they do make a pervious flooring. So the installation of it, so it allows water to penetrate through it and drain through it.
And all money, sorry to take over since two finance people here, I guess this comes from capital fund.
This would either be out of, it depends on when we do the project, but the project could be either done out of, we could have it as part of the budget, we could have it as part of the capital fund, or we could have it, part of some other designated fund that the district so chooses to use. But there's a number of different ways. I think what we originally talked about is we didn't know, what kind of ideas we would get from the landscaping committee. I think we originally said, we're going to put aside $10,000 for addressing the concern. Well, we're certainly above $10,000 at this point, but the ideas here that came were way beyond what I thought, what I had imagined, and to the positive, in terms of it provides a different perspective. I was thinking of some bushes, trees, things of that nature. And this is way beyond that, which I'm pleasantly surprised, and I think I was really surprised when I saw this a few weeks ago, so, you know, while it's a different price tag than what we anticipated, I think there's a lot of merit to consider some of this, because this is a long time, beautification opportunity for us, to make this a welcoming front for our building.
I thought with Grant Baker's name, asterisk next to his name, the Baker family was paying for it. I'm just kidding. I'm totally teasing. It's like,
Why was there an asterisk next to Grant Baker's name?
It's Grant's design. So,
It's Grant's design,
so,
and he's not here?
He's on the baseball trip to,
Okay.
so.
Are you done?
yes.
Based
All right,
on
I'll go.
sketches.
I am in line with Dr. Zerby saying, this is why we have the smart people and the people here every day design what they want it to look like, because never in a million years would I thought this. But all I know is, that's awful. That's it's embarrassing. Kids, I always say this, and people here have tried, I'm a Methacton alumni. That's ugly, right? This is awesome. We're talking $60,000 bucks. We're a $120 million organization a year. So. What?
Sorry, I was so sorry. I said plus what you were, I was kidding.
But I absolutely love this. I think we get this done and we do the other side next and continue this.
Okay.
Were you guys thinking of this as a class of 22 gift? Not that I'm asking anyone to pay for it. Are
Good
you?
idea.
We did not start that way. The committee actually is comprised of students from all 4 grades. Our seniors really have taken amazing leadership, and they've just done a phenomenal job. We weren't quite sure timeline-wise where this was going to fit in, so we weren't thinking a senior gift like that. But there is merit to what they said, that they'd like to leave their mark. I think it's important also to notice they're so eager. When we first started, we did a walk around the grounds, and you know, Abby wanted to stop right out here outside the LGI. When you're leaving, you can still light out, take a look. She's like, the moss garden would be great in here, and like, they just have wonderful ideas that, you know, after we got out there, we looked at the east wing and we gotta fix this. I'm like, baby steps, one step at a time here. But
No,
they're
it's
amazing
awesome.
and brilliant, and I draw stick figures, you know what I mean? But to see Grant's, so we had little sketches and stick figures, and then we shared it with Mr. Kralik. He's our new tech ed teacher. I thought it was really important for you to meet who he is, as well as Denise and Christy. Denise is a special ed teacher, Christy's one of our instructional assistants. But they're vested in making us look better, and you know, Mr. Kralik's classes were able to kind of take our drawings and put them on paper and look professional. You know, it makes a difference when you're presenting something like this to be able to visualize what it is to a landscape architect versus, I want a circle over here and some pavers, you know? So to really be able to see their vision come to life, I think was just instrumental in us being able to move forward.
No, it's really cool, and if anyone has Grant's phone, text him that this is really, really cool. This is a great idea. I would throw the idea back to you as some sort of messaging as the class that endured COVID the longest, some sort of messaging, that's lost the most. Just my idea, you guys do whatever you want. This is stunningly awesome. Congratulations, thank you.
Thanks for those comments, appreciate it.
Yeah, fantastic. Some of the reasons I loved it, you know, the collaboration and taking all the students, but also making it part of the class, and it was just fantastic. Collaboration. Love thinking about the drainage and the shading and the lighting, with all sort of sustainable type of solutions. So that's fantastic as well. Just curious, how did you guys? I imagine there were other entries. Did you guys vote, or did you combine the best of the world with best practices and you redesigned?
It was a kind of gallery walk, so we took, they did a great job with, they had, you know, pages and pages of notes and drawings, and then submitted it to Mr. Kralik's classes. He shared with them kind of, all right, here's what they want to do, and this is really our first, he only had these kids for like 2 weeks before the semester changed. And so he's quickly, you know, taught them to CAD and tried to put ideas to paper, and allowed them to add their ideas as well. And so we had about 12, 15
students,
who finished the project. We hung them up on the walls, and then walked through and then picked everything apart. I like this, I don't like this. This looks really cool. What if we moved this over here? And then from there, Grant's proposal visualized most of what they wanted. And so from there, we just kind of kept, tweaking and adding.
Yeah, they provided the sketches. So when I took over mid-year and I saw these sketches, I said, what are these sketches? And found out about the committee and everything, and I said, this is perfect for my students in the computer-aided drawing class. So we brought out their sketches, all their ideas. You guys all had great ideas. And I took my class outside and took a tape measure. We measured, we used Google Maps and took measurements. And I wanted them to see the space, and like you said, it's just barren out there right now. So we looked at the auditorium, and we thought about people coming out of the auditorium. We thought about people arriving at the school. We thought about the main entrance, people coming out of the main entrance. We had a lot of talks. So between the sketches and my students seeing what's out there, we had ideas with ponds and nature walks, and there's a lot of different ideas.
This principal just had the same image I had.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we skipped that.
But this is, Grant and the other students in class, they all did a wonderful job, and the sketches, we're so happy. Like, I was so happy to bring this project to the students because it was a real life project to them. They got to go outside and see the space and then create these drawings and get a feel for, this is a real life project.
No, it's great. It definitely sounds collaborative too at the end of the day. Congratulations to Grant, but it was really the entire design was everybody, right? So interesting is that I was part of the strategic committee for property, and one of the things that came from that as a recommendation was the view of our high school being supposedly more or less the center of the school district perspective of being supposed to be your shining star in some ways, because that's generally what people look at when they're going into the community. And there was a lot of comments about there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. So this fits in perfectly from a strategic planning perspective as well. So I guess from our perspective,
Send it to him.
yeah, I don't know, that was sort of thing. I was wondering if there was a parent or somebody that is involved in landscaping design or something that would be willing to support from a volunteer perspective and vetting this out. If not, obviously we spend money, but to get it vetted through. But I think it's a great design, and I think it's even more impressive with how you guys went about to get there.
So, can I get permission to move this forward to the board to ask for design assistance and we'll put out basically what I'd like to do is put out an RFI to get a professional to find out what that cost would be to work with us, and then from there bring that to the board.
And I know it's different when we're in a school. I mean, you have my permission, absolutely. It is, from my understanding, but I know it's different for a public entity, but if a company is willing to do the work, isn't the quote and the design free? Not free, but what I meant by that is we're not, to get quotes like we do for a roof, that doesn't cost money, correct?
Yeah, the design.
No, but we
Right.
finished the design work.
No, that I understand.
Yes, what we have to do is we have to take some of the questions that you had this evening, as well as we probably have in terms of security and other things, and work while working with the students. We would like to keep them involved in this process, but making sure that we take a design professional who does this for a living and say, well, you got to consider this, you got to consider that, because we got to take space, aesthetics, the type of bushes, like some of the bushes, for example. I think the first question I had was, you're saying there's berries that grow in these bushes? And what did I had a concern about the berries in the bushes. Why? The berries, they wanted berries in the bushes because there were nice bright red berries and they really stand out. I said, but where are they gonna go? They're like they picked off.
They get stepped on and dragged into.
So those are all things that we have to kind of work through, but we need somebody who does this for a living, so that if we're gonna put this in place, and then like Mr. McGinnis suggested, we have the other side. So if we're gonna think about this, let's think of this, you know, as a bigger picture possibly, okay? Because, you know, we don't wanna put, you know, green on the left side and white on the right side, while you think that those are our colors, you know, that might not be the best overall plan, especially given the you know, the feedback that we got from the strategic planning committee. So what I'd like the commission to do is go out and get you a quote of what it would cost to have a professional work with us, and then bring that back to the property committee, get your approval on that, to move that to the board. We get that adopted, then we start the actual work on this type of stuff.
As long as you guarantee they continue to have a seat at the table.
As long as they're willing to work with me, and I think they are, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, good.
For, ladies, do you have, your plans set for August or for after Methacton High School?
I don't. But
Okay,
yeah.
but I just asked if you're gonna be nearby, or
I'll be around.
Okay, and hope, but before then,
Oh, yeah, we can get started on the RFI process tomorrow, and that's what I'd like to be able to do.
wonderful.
So we'll, so now we're gonna use our English skills. Okay?
Our what?
Proposals.
Well done. Thank you, Dr. Graves, thank you, staff.
Thank you.
And your support the students. Make sure you give a pat to thank yourself, and then also let all the rest of the team know that we appreciate it. We'll be back in touch. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Matt.
Thank you.
Okay, master plan timeline. It's not bad for the master plan timeline.
Timeline. Okay, not budget, timeline. Yeah, timeline. Sorry. All right, right now we're working, with Davey on, the current master plan that we have, and we have started with, putting together our completed tasks to date from the original master plan, which is about 4 years of, completed projects. And then we're working forward on basically a 10-year plan out from that with current pricing and list of projects that we have, as well as additional stuff from Dr. Zerbe that we'll be putting together. So, and next month we'll be bringing you tentative information, so that we can come back in May with more of a hard copy of the presentation for you. So as we move into June to make decisions, we'll have and work through the process of the expanded document that we have now, and show those projects for the board to approve.
Yeah, so two things. One, we're gonna update the document so it's current, and secondly, we're gonna summarize all the projects that we've completed and the costs associated with the projects, so we show our progress over time.
Okay?
Yeah, I apologize. Is this a standing item on the agenda? And then we didn't really have anything underneath? Or that was the update? Okay, all right,
This is
sorry.
the timeline.
Yeah, okay.
Because typically that plan gets updated in June. But we're just, we're a lot of time to move it ahead.
Yeah, okay. The financials?
So, currently, we have $17.2 million that are available in funds. That includes the $5.7 million committed, $9.7 million remaining in our bond, and $1.7 million in our capital reserve. We'll note that our capital reserve, we've already agreed to spend about $170,000 of that on grounds, needs, and vehicles. So that has not yet been processed. That's still included in there, so that ultimately would reduce to about $1.5 million, or basically give you $17 million over almost 3 years. The 2017 to 2020 plus the fueling projects are now completed, and all funds have been paid. Eagleville, we still have a remaining balance of $670,000 roughly, as we go through the knock list and the other different items that are out there.
high school canopy project, as we know, will be starting back up in June, and we'll start spending money there. In the 2022 cost to complete, you have the Eagleville roofing project for about $1.2 million. And then you have the Sky New York VAS front end, that's $166,000. And then we have our estimated cost of about $297,000 for district costs, advertising, legal, liquidating, anything else that we run into, that's the district-wide cost associated with that. And then finally, you have the Arrowhead project, which is now down to $10.8 million. Overall, we have about $14 million worth of projects cost outstanding to complete as it stands today, which if we use our committed funds, that gives us $3.1 million remaining after we're all done. And I'm sorry, capital reserve. If we use our capital reserve, that leaves us with $3.1 million left. If we exclude the capital reserve, that would leave us with $1.4 million of funds, which should be enough to start the 2023 summer projects. Is there any questions on the financials?
The cost to complete remaining balance, and those are all, is that what's left in the bucket to spend, or those all, we're just expecting invoices? I guess the question is, will there be any remaining balance after all invoices are paid, or is it gonna be?
Well, no, so as we hit everything, they'll be paid off. However, that's not something that these change orders will have to be added into that, so that will increase and change those numbers.
Gotcha.
If there's anything else that we do to adjust that, plus then you're gonna close it out, if there's any remaining allowances, you'll be reducing that off the remaining balance to complete, so.
But that number is not inclusive of any of those events you just mentioned?
No, anything that's been board approved is included, anything that is pending board approval is not.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So like the change orders you're gonna go through tonight are not included in these numbers.
Gotcha.
But the allowances that are built into the contracts are approved on, so there's a balance sheet at the end, as well, so.
Yeah, I just wanted to know.
So you could have some residual cash on hand, and that's the goal, obviously. Any other questions on the financials?
Thank you. All right, so we have the 2021 capital projects, starting with Eagleville. And this evening, we have a couple items to discuss here with the closing out of this project. And the first one is the differential due to the nighttime work for installing unit ventilators. And the work that was completed by 5-Star and their subcontractors, and the hours involved were in the sheets that I sent out this weekend, timing and hours for that differential. Originally, the original price for this was $25,562.80, and the architect and engineer was able to negotiate that down to $10,000 as the total price for the installation, additional cost to the installation for those units.
So that's change order MC 007,
Yes.
10,000.
10,000.
10,000 even, okay.
Yes.
But I don't have the sheet in front of me, so how many total hours does the 10K represent for that night?
I need to get back to you on that, because I have.
But again, that
the
was,
document, but yes.
just to be clear, and I think I'm right here, and I'll let you know. That was the incentive we needed to throw to these vendors to make sure these things were completed on time because of the delivery delays due to the supply chain issues. Okay,
Yes.
so we had to incentivize them to work at night. They did everything we asked them to do, and we're happy with all of it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Around that question, it seems like in the weekly memo, it keeps on saying 98% complete on these.
Yes. So right now, we're waiting for 5-Star to come back in to make, they need to install a few items, which they're gonna complete this week during the holiday break, and then we should be able to finish up the work after they get back.
So you're just waiting.
Yeah, we're trying to push them.
Is it the labor, was the labor by 5-Star as well?
Yes.
Okay, I just was double checking, it's not the same vendor, okay.
Just agree on these one way.
Well, are we on to the, oh, you mean the 10K first?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then what, the next one?
Okay. The next one here is, also for 5-star, and this is to, relocate, sprinkler piping due to, interference. So this was in the principal's office area and the common space where originally you had, sprinkler piping in that location. And for the installation of the new HVAC system, they had to put ductwork, just above the ceiling, which meant we had to relocate, some sprinkler heads that, weren't picked up during the study that was done for the design. So this was to disconnect and then reconnect the piping and reroute the piping for the sprinkler heads.
And the cost?
And the cost is, was $3,800.
I know you sent this in an email, but I didn't print it out and bring it with me.
$3,801. Okay. Yes, one more. Is any questions on that one? Okay, and then the next one we have is, this is a cost from the contract, and this is for, connecting the condensate lines to the unit ventilators. And this is to install condensate lines on the second floor to the rain meters, rather than to the outside of the building, so that the condensate would not cause discoloration to the brick. Original price was $12,560.02, and then the engineer recommended trying, tying to the original drain leaders and reducing that cost to $6,000. So this is a cost because it was piping within the contract, and we were able to pull it from the cost of the contract.
And which vendor is this?
And this is also 5-star. These three are 5-star.
So the original design is that it going out to the exterior wall?
Yes. Unfortunately, we had other piping there that they could tie back into, and that was recommended to do that. Any other questions?
Is this, before we go on to the high school canopy and pads, is that it for, that's it for Eagleville other than 2022, right?
The other thing I have is the, with the terrazzo tile installation.
Yes,
The architect is working, and reviewing the installation itself, going over it. We have rejected the installation, so they're coming up with options. So tomorrow morning, Jack will be with the architect doing more research on the tile installation and what options we do have to correct it.
And just so you guys, that is key, what you said, that we have rejected the installation, just the gentleman for you guys, we were at the ribbon cutting, and it was lovely, but, we did take a good look at that terrazzo tile, and it's not looking too pretty, and, it is not level. I mean, you can't see it by the naked eye, but we were doing a little ping pong ball action, and I know that's not exactly, scientific, but, yeah, so I'm glad to hear those words, because we didn't hear those words on Thursday night, or whatever night it was, Thursday afternoon, that we rejected the installation, so thank you, okay.
Sure.
Perfect.
Okay, next is the Arrowhead construction update. I'm sure.
Nothing on, nothing under the high school academy path.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
High school camping bed, yes. We're remobilizing and having a meeting, April 13th, which is, this Wednesday, with the contractors here on site for the remobilization. We will be starting on June 13th with an estimated completion date of July 31st. So where the pads are we working now? It's, canopy over the commons area and the restroom entrance on the back side, and then the auditorium entrance. Okay. So those are the three areas, plus, ballards in front of the school.
Does the canopy canopy going in the back?
Yes, it was pushed back first due to not having the canopy, and then we couldn't do such an extensive project during the school year, so that's why it was pushed to June.
Over the commons.
Over the
Common
common
restroom
section.
entrance.
Okay. Okay.
Was there one before?
No, it's
Okay,
all part of our
Yeah, yeah, just
strategic plan of
okay.
beautifying
How-
and water
that's where I was
and
getting.
water
Okay.
infiltration. I'm gonna say the wrong words again.
Okay.
Okay, okay, now.
All right. Next, Arrowhead construction update. Audubon Water Company has, tapped in their 6-inch water tap for the fire system, which is on the corner of our property, coming off of their property. And then there'll be a, meter pit located right off the corner of the property there, which the attorneys are now working on the right way for it to be installed. In the packet, I had included, we went out to bid to 10 bids for the move of the contents from the old Arrowhead to the new Arrowhead. And we had 4 companies bid with us for the relocation of this. And we do have a low bid with L&J Transportation at $32,878.
So generally speaking, what happens is, on the 10th of June, was the last student/teacher day, that following Monday, this moving company will come in and move we have to have a quick move out of everything during that week, so we get the asbestos abatement process started. The key thing here is to buy as much time as we can up front, so that we can get the paving in prior to the start of school, so that we can get buses in front of the building, parking for staff and parents. That's what that's the timeline.
So is that moving company doing that in one day?
No, we're doing it in a 4-day period.
Okay.
So we will be working in there along with them, reviewing other things. So they're out of Pottstown, local company. They came in with the best bid. We've done walkthroughs. I'm also using them on the project at Eagleville right now to do the library. We're replacing the carpets this coming week there. So what this is for is I'll need approval, and then we will cut them a PO through the school for this work. They're not a contractor on the project, so we'll need the approval to.
So we're asking permission
Permission.
board for consideration.
This is already in the Arrowhead project, putting a move in.
No, it's not in the budget of this project.
So this is additional. So when the
I'm sorry, and so the number that you saw up there, the 10.4, we'll have to add this cost in, in addition to the change orders that we had, and the cost to complete. So the amount to complete will increase.
And you're saying it has to be done this quickly, or we won't be able to get the paving. One of the things that could be held up is the paving.
We can't afford. Well, there's two problems. One, we don't have people physically capable of moving all the stuff.
No, agreed.
Two, I don't know how long it would take us to do that, and most of our people, and I don't take this in the wrong way, but I would imagine our people aren't here to be movers. They're here to clean, they're here to, fix things.
No, that I understand.
So the
That I
company that
understand.
does this, is gonna be more effective and efficient for us, because they have the resources, they have the know-how. Basically, there's a process in place where the teacher can put their stuff in boxes, and even in the center of the room, at the end, they go in, they get it, they put it on pallets, they wheel it out, they get it on a truck, and it just goes across the roadway, out into the gymnasium or to the room if it's already completed on the second floor. So the plan is the best use of our time.
No, and it's not, I don't have a problem with it, I just wish it was part of the initial budget. I know things come along, it's just my, I understand what happened with the water company, that was beyond there's nothing, I just wish it was part of the original budget, that's all.
I would've thought it was part of this.
Yeah, that's all. That's all. It's not a huge deal.
We're still well under budget, to be clear. Yeah, I understand.
What I'm just giving you is the actual cost, just want to make sure we're well under the budget.
Okay, we'll just make that clear.
Historically low bid price.
Correct. And I think that's actually a quoted statement. I mean, even though I agree,
I'm sorry, I missed what you said.
historically low bids.
Yeah.
Who's not for the same bid, I mean, we're talking probably what, 10-15% more, no?
I'll put this included, they would mark it up for themselves and do that. This is at least the 5% mark that we ran through the contract.
Actually save money on direct. Yeah, definitely. And there's a premium we paid because we needed it out, because we got time. That's what they do. And I'm sure they're bonded in case they break something. Yes, you can't have anybody else in the company that does this do it.
And we basically did the same thing with the COVID, when we cleaned stuff out of the schools, brought somebody in to get it out quickly and professionally.
So we'll move this on, the board's discretion, but thanks.
All right, just wanted to give you an update that, we did get pricing for the concrete, or the water tank. It was, originally we had asked, for approval on not to exceed $95,000. So the concrete work itself is approximately half that cost. I'm still waiting for the mechanical side of this, which we are anticipating also to come in, below of, and the combination of the two quotes should be below the 95,000. So, I will hopefully have that for you at the next meeting and to finish that, portion of the project off.
So if we already approved not to exceed 95,000, we don't really have to approve anything else?
No,
So
I
you're
just
just
wanted
filling
to
this, no, that's
fill you
great,
in
I
and let
just,
you know where
no, perfect, I just wanted to make sure,
Okay.
alright?
Our next change order is PCO 18, and this is for rail and portal curbs for mini splits. Mini splits are the compressor part of an air conditioning unit, so they put the mini split outside with the fan to transfer the heat. And what happened here is that as it was designed, the mini splits, there was 2 mini splits put on a rail system on the roof, and it was recommended afterwards by the manufacturer that we put each mini split on its own support system so there wouldn't be vibration and they would operate better if they're on a standalone system. So this is for the 6, and the change order is for $7,984.10 for the additional rail and portal curbs, is what they call it.
And what's the vendor for that?
This is the Studner.
Speaking of, sorry to go back to Eagleville, I forgot my one other Eagleville question. And I'm not gonna use the right term, so forgive me. The HVAC, all of that, I know I'm not using the right term. They're still calibrating? That doesn't make
Testing and
sense.
balancing.
Balancing, thank you.
Commissioning.
Yeah.
And, cause apparently it's still not the temperature, and listen, my building, where I work, everyone, there's always temperature concerns, but shouldn't that be settled by now? Sorry to go back, I forgot that question.
No, right now we're waiting for 5-Star to do their few items. Once 5-Star does that, then we'll have the control people finish what they're doing, and then they'll finish.
Okay, so there is something that still has to be done, okay, and that's fine, I just wanted to be able to get back to, okay, perfect, sorry, I apologize, alright, back to, alright, so 4, just finished 4, sorry.
Okay, the next item is, this isn't really a change order, but it's a purchase order again, because the school is providing these services. It's our responsibility to do soil samples for any soil removed from the site. And right now, we have not removed any soil from the site. And what we have to do is we have to do the testing to certify that it's clean fill so that they can tell us where it needs to be taken to when it's taken off-site. And this is for, finally they have come back and told us we have approximately 10,000 cubic yards of material that will be needed to be removed from the site. Once they do put in the other drainage and the retention areas. So to complete that, it's required that we have a test per 1,000 cubic yards. We've paid for 2 so far with the testing company. We need 8 more for them to complete the job. And the cost of that is going to be $10,000 to complete that testing.
How's that work? Can you sell that fill or
No,
redistribute it?
no, with the fill itself, it'll be taken to a site used as, fill. A lot of the issue we have is not really clean fill. If we kept it on site or another location would be all right, but because we're taking it off site, they go through different things, and right now, there's, one product that's in the soil that creates a problem, so we have to be very careful and make sure that it's tested properly to be removed from the site.
All right, so you're scaring me a little bit. We're gonna pay, we gotta pay 8 more tests. We get bad news on that test. We have a remediation issue on
No,
that.
we already know what the other tests were, it's just that we need the test per 1,000 cubic yards.
I get that.
For that.
You said,
So-
so we're gonna test to make sure it's clean.
Yes.
And then you said, well, if it's not clean, they have to do something with it. Who's taking it, what are they gonna, it's theirs? Like, there's
No,
gotta be
it's,
some residual
it's
value
just,
to this clean
it's just
fill.
determine what the site is that they take it to. So, right now, the excavation contractor is responsible for removing the soil, and they're taking it to a landfill site.
Never to be used again, or is the landfill gonna
Never,
be reset?
never to be used again.
So if it's never gonna be used again, why does it have to be tested?
Because we can't dump dirt in soil.
That's the law. It's the law.
Oh, okay, that's.
And we're responsible for the testing, because we have to tell them what it is in the
It's
soil.
not unusual, but.
Yeah.
No, makes sense, that's why we have these meetings to ask these questions, so that when we get a bill for fill, we know what we're paying for.
So, in terms of this item, it's really not a change order, because there's not a contract in place, but we would need to issue a purchase order. And so, just to keep it in line with what we've been doing in terms of the amount that we've been bringing forward, we will, we'll provide notice on the board agenda, but we will proceed, to start forward with the purchase order, just informing you that we need to do that, but I'll put it on the work session agenda as just an information item, not something we have to act on.
And maybe we can just reword it. Because
Yeah, yeah,
we
sure.
put clean fill testing, and we're saying it's not clean fill, so it's wrong. I mean, like, we could just, we're just.
Clean fill certification.
Yes.
We'll take care of that, thank you.
Okay. Okay, the next is an allowance from the contract for a drywall soffit to cover sprinkler piping in the stairwell. So with the relocation with the location of sprinkler piping, it was discussed and need to put a cover over this piping, and the cost of that will be $952 to be paid for the contract as an allowance.
Okay.
952.88.
Yes. All right, and then the next three here are, change orders, and, these basically are a result of the delay and the original testing that couldn't take place, so we couldn't design things properly. So what we have here first is the relocation of the meter pit to revise associated piping to accommodate Audubon Water Company. And this is the new meter pit that's being located on the corner of the property for the fire hydrants on site. So there's 2 fire hydrants on site. And,
So that's 24.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, but that's right, 24, how much is 24?
So 24 is 37,203.85.
And who's the vendor?
This will be Stubner.
That's true.
Yeah.
And then back
And then back to 23, sorry about that. That 23 is to allow for the grading and paving at the bus entrance to accommodate the shallow water main. And Audubon Water Company has requested that the paving at the bus entrance be modified to provide additional coverage to achieve 18 inches of covering over the water main in the street. The cost change to this order is $101,000 $411.35 to cover the shallow grove. And each of you, I had put into your packet a drawing showing the additional blacktop and work to be done with that. And this is also a student.
We're not ripping anything up out there, there's no current existing paving right there, even like a base coat. You said, the only thing that got me was adjust grading and paving. Is there paving currently existing right now that we have to rip up, or is this just the additional to make sure we're safe?
They will mill the street and then they will bring it up.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay?
And 18 inches extra.
No, 18 inches coverage. We're just bringing it up a few inches, but we need to make sure there's 18 inches of coverage. over
So
the
what
pipe.
was it initially going to be?
24 inches. That's what it is by code, it's supposed to be.
So it's, instead of 24, it's gonna be 18? And that's more expensive?
No, I know what you're saying. It is 18 inches extra. You're correct about that, yes.
If the pipe was at the depth that it should have been, we shouldn't have had to do anything to the roof.
Correct.
Gotcha. And this
So-
is the roadway, not this is the roadway on the school property, not level road.
No, it's
The
a little
road's
more.
crowned, so that the crown of the road as it approaches our property, is lower than the top of the crown. And therefore, that depth of where the road is and where the pipe is underneath that, where it kind of meets our property, is lower than it needs to be by code. And therefore, by raising this, we're creating coverage, which in their minds, I mean, Audubon Water Company minds, they have enough coverage to, to keep going. The other option would be to, remove to dig a different, path and move the pipe lower, which would disrupt water completely to the entire community.
And just bear with
It'd
me
be
for one.
twice as much as cost.
No, bear with me for 1 second. So a lot of times when you develop something, right, like Lidl developed that in Lower Providence, they developed a store, right? Often a company will do some improvements or the township agrees. So this is all on us, even though it's level road.
Because we're making the improvements.
Because we're making improvements, okay. Okay, I mean, it is what it is, I just, and listen, it is what it is, I just, how much?
Well, the issue that you're probably getting is the one that we've already been.
Yes, I'm not gonna beat a dead horse.
Here's the issue is, why is the pipe going in the approved,
To start with.
right? And then everybody's going like this. The problem is, we don't get water unless we make this fix.
No,
And we're not getting a whole lot of cooperation.
And I totally get that, and that's why it is what it is. Let me ask you this, about how much is our water bill going to be, or is for Arrowhead a year? Just curious.
A year?
Or on a month, if you pay it by the month,
It's 12 grand, 15 grand off the top of my head.
Okay, so I'm just curious, that's all, I'm just curious how much, what kind of customer we are for them. Okay, last one.
And the last one here
Captive
is,
customer, because you can't get a
Right,
water
oh,
anywhere.
right, I know, but I was just curious, it's like, and they don't make money off of
Commodity
that.
inelasticity.
Right.
Go on the board, draw it up.
I think Audubon understands that.
You think their pricing policy takes that into consideration? Yeah.
all right, and the last item here is to provide an additional 4-inch pipe to the building to separate the sprinkler service from the fire hydrants as per Audubon Water Company.
And
this
this, sorry, go ahead.
This is to accommodate the low water pressure, and the Audubon Water Company has requested sprinkler system be separate from the fire hydrant service, and instead feed from an existing 4-inch service and the existing meter pit. The cost change is $63,348.85 for the additional piping and installation.
And that was the question we had last month when we didn't know how big of a pipe was needed, and now we know. Okay, there's the answer. Okay, 4 inch.
we can try to do an investigation,
No, I know.
or we can do that after the fact if we need to. We
Yeah,
don't
there's
need
no
to do
delay.
that right now.
Yeah, I understand.
September's coming fast.
Okay, anybody have any, this moving forward? Yeah,
No.
okay, number 8, master plan projects.
All right, master plan project for Eagleville Elementary School for the re-roofing project. Background checks have been received, for the contracted, employees, and we're ready to begin the project. So that will be starting on June 13th. And then the sky view, the front end HVAC control replacement, we held a project meeting with the contractor, and they're also ready to start June 13th with that project.
Quick question about between the canopies and these two starting June 13th, I'd already asked, that's manageable. But who's the overseer of each of those projects? It is still, okay.
Yeah.
It is still Fidavia.
And
for
we're
all
also
three.
gonna have Mark Zolvet,
Okay.
Zobek Consulting
Okay.
on Eagleville as well.
Okay.
So it's gonna be
Okay, I was just curious
many
about,
eyes.
okay, I just wasn't sure who, like, if that was
Our group will also be working with the Skyview HVAC controls,
okay,
because we're already operating the system, so we'll be working with them as they bring the systems online
okay.
and working with them. So-
And then who helps, just because the whole mover is a little bit of a different thing, is that kind of under your?
That'll be us,
Oh, that'll
okay,
be you.
myself and Tim.
I was just,
Gallo
yeah, gotcha,
will be working there, along with our whole team, because while they're moving stuff, we'll be removing stuff that we wanna bring out of the school during those 4 days.
and you understand why I'm asking, just because that's 4 things like all going on 6/13, that's why I'm asking. Okay.
Okay. Transportation, any update?
So the main update for tonight, and I'm gonna provide is regards to bus patrol. PennDOT has finally provided the language or the programming criteria for the FTP. So now, bus patrol is rewriting their software. Most of the places that bus patrol or home states, bus patrol, sends as they occur, sends the information. PennDOT requires a batch process where you batch it, send it up, and then send it back in the morning. So that's not how bus patrol's programming was written, so they're in the process of rewriting that and rescoping out the process to work that, because obviously, instead of getting them back while someone's sitting there, you're gonna get a couple thousand, because we're not getting a client. You're gonna get a couple thousand in the morning to do it, so they have to rework the process associated with that. And then once that's all done, they'll be turning on the cameras. And it's hoped by the end of, before the end of May.
Well, the cameras already are on.
I was just,
The stop arm camera for processing citations. Not that they're not running, not that they're not capturing it, but so they can send a citation.
So the PennDOT wanted a daily batch drop on?
Yep. Instead of as it's occurring throughout the day. Most of the states are interactive, as they submit it, it goes out and comes back.
Are they API deliver or now how are they delivering the data to PennDOT?
It's gonna be, they're gonna upload a file. And then they're gonna upload a file with the license plate
I get that.
and a location, and then PennDOT's gonna send them back to them.
And they want to do that once a day as opposed to throughout the day.
Yes.
Actually, pretty good. That's true.
It's all, not just rewriting the program, but their process. Their internal staffing process. So they have to work there. It's not a massive issue, but it is something that they do have to already work.
Oh, there should be nothing that impacts us.
It has nothing to do with.
Well, the only impact it'll have for us is citations will start to happen. If people.
Correct. Yeah, I'm just curious as to.
I'm giving you May, their goal is a lot more aggressive, but I'm telling you, those things, given what PennDOT's done so far, the things we've gone through, May seems like a good shot.
Probably June 13th.
But still have this one we can bust in another school.
and maybe in the summer, any summer busing.
Yes, do you know
There
that?
you go, and maybe people aren't as careful in the summer. Who knows? That's it for
That's
sure.
basically for transportation, we've already, as I said last week, we started the process school year round, but that's just in its infancy stages.
I have a transportation question. Children, students able to take other buses, that was stopped because of COVID and contact tracing, correct, or am I wrong?
That was part of it. It was
Okay.
stopped because of contact tracing, and also busing capacity, as well as safety and security.
So is that a permanent change in our district?
Yes.
Okay, that was the question brought to me, and so now, no children, there used to be slips kids could fill out, pre-COVID, but it was a multifaceted reason to change it, capacity, things like that, okay.
The main one being safety and capacity.
So, okay, safety and capacity, okay, so that's a forever change, okay.
Well, I would recommend yes, that'd be a permanent change.
There's just too many dynamics, notes and kids getting on the right buses, and then the actual busing numbers change.
It was asked and I said I would ask, because I did not remember the details of that.
I'll give you a really quick, simple scenario to give you an example as well. 17 kids, and then they all get on bus X. Bus X already has its capacity, 17 kids get on. Now bus X gets in an accident. We don't know which 17 kids are on that bus to inform their parents of what happened.
I was just asking because it was asked of me and I didn't know the full answer.
It is highly recommended that we keep that.
Okay, gotcha.
Another question on transportation, I know, maybe I'll ask on Wednesday, with the full day kindergarten, we're losing some routes in the middle of the day. Is that,
They were out, right, yes.
they've been taken out of the budget? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, discussion topics, capital fund recommendation. Okay.
Off the record. Okay, so the capital fund recommendation, you want me to put some,
Well, okay, so.
I just wanna know where you want me, I don't know
Well,
where.
there's a number of things going on with the capital fund, so our conversation about the capital fund with finance on Wednesday is gonna be just a little bit different
That's
than
very
this one. But generally speaking, what we're recommending that we put together and then share with this committee is to look at the long-term planning and use of the capital fund, not only as a fund that helps us with emergency repairs from time to time, but is scaled over a long period of time and is funded through contributions from the general fund on a regular basis, whereby a plan is designed to take into consideration things that we already know are going to come to an end of life within the period of time for which we plan. So for example, if we put together a 20-year plan and we say we have vehicles, roofs, and sidewalks, or sidewalks is a bad idea, but something that is going to come to end of life, instead of borrowing for all of these items on a regular basis, we already have them and we know that we would need to replace them at some point. We believe that starting with some core items and putting them in a plan, designating them to be replaced over certain years, and then planning the cost and the infusion of resources into that capital fund to take care of those things over time is a better, not only better use of our available resources, but is more consistent and appropriate in terms of lessening the cost to the taxpayers, knowing that we have to keep things up and running. So as an example, we will be sharing Wednesday evening with the finance committee that, if we had $7 million and we needed to replace, a couple roofs, we had to borrow $7 million over that 25-year period, we would probably need interest of about $4.3 million to borrow $7. If we over 5 or 6 years are putting, say, $1,000, or not $1,000, but putting money from our general operating budget into that fund, like other schools do, we would then have that fund to be able to pay for that expense and limit and lessen the amount that we would need to borrow. So it's a trade-off in terms of how that impacts our general operating budget, in addition to knowing that we have foresight to take into consideration the things that need to be replaced. I mean, every 5 years or 7 years, whatever the number of years that we've got to replace a vehicle or another piece of equipment, we should have those things planned. And what we're suggesting, and this is, Tim brought this back after going to a conference recently. So this is what we ought to do. So he's kind of started on the process, but we want to just get your feedback, so that if you think it's a bad idea, we can stop it right here. But this is what we'd like to propose.
Just curious, why are you bringing that to property instead of finance?
Well, we should get your meetings first.
Okay, just because we're here.
But we need to, it is a finance question, but it's also a property question, because at the end of the day, we should be putting these, aside from the master plan and these big projects, there really has to be a capital plan set aside for these specific items.
Yeah, you want an aspect of self-funding.
Yeah.
So.
Boilers, roofs,
Right.
chillers.
It makes total sense, and it's kind of the natural progression of where we were going. We didn't have a facility plan, now we have a facility plan, we need the finance plan to back that, in layman's terms, correct?
But absolutely, I would have, you asked what our opinion would be mine, that we put some sort of policy statement along this line item, because you know what happens when there's a bucket of cash and something happens outside of what that bucket of cash was pointed towards, there's a natural tendency to reach in, and I get it. Do we allow it, do we not allow it? I'm not saying, it's definitely a great case of emergency, great class case of emergency policy statement that the board agrees to, and if you want to alter it, it has to be voted on or something, just so there are some metrics on that line item that when asked, what the heck is this? Well, this is what it is, and this is the policy associated with that line item. So
That's a great suggestion, and that goes to the point that, for the longest time, we've tried to address this capital fund issue. So, sometimes there's $200,000 in the capital fund, and then over maybe 2 years, we put money into it, and then all of a sudden, there's nothing going into it, and then it sits for another 2 years, and that's not a fair way to expect us to have any impact long term by having it seesawed through the process. So your point's well taken, and I wholeheartedly agree. So we'll make sure that we take that into consideration. But what I'd like to have Tim do first is just run by the main items with me before he puts the timeline together and the financials. I want him to share with you what he has so far in terms of the key items. I'll avoid this. It can't be everything that has a life cycle that'll turn over, but he has a couple of thoughts. You want to show what you have at this point?
Yeah, so we have roofs, obviously, and you have the chillers, you have the boilers, there's the front end system, there's paving, not just sidewalks, but the roads that need to be, the roads in and out of the school districts, vehicles. I'll be honest, I saw a lot of this Supreme Court's plan.
He's a good CFO, so.
They have a very good, they're actually at the point where they're actually starting to plan to add in furniture replacement for theirs.
Bob Hunter and Thinker, great.
They got, so they have a lot, so it starts with those items that we know they're reasonably something we should be able to afford. I'm not talking a $12 million HVAC system. I'm talking the normal life expectancy, and know it's gonna have to be replaced. You should plan for it, so you don't have to borrow for it to pay the interest on it. Items like that, so we don't come back and say, we got a new lawnmower we need to buy. We should know, next year we need a lawnmower and we need a van. We should plan for it now versus come begging and hoping we can have the funds to get that stuff.
I have one question. So let's say we have, money for a boiler or chiller or whatever, and does it mean it has to get spent? What I mean by that is, and this is a bad example, but it's the most realistic example I can give you. So we in my home still have our existing air conditioning. We are expecting it to break at any moment, and we have money set aside. but we still have our original, and it is way beyond its lifespan. So we're not replacing it. So I ask, does that mean you have to replace the boiler, cause we put the money in there?
There's no requirement to do it.
But it's planned.
And to your point, it doesn't mean it couldn't.
The way we run our homes.
It's
has
different,
to be-
and I agree, I agree.
Can be different than we run a school.
Right.
So for example, you know, there are thousands of people that depend on the school being open at a certain period of time and.
And I
so we
appreciate
need
that,
to-
and that's why I knew it might not be the best question, so that's what I need to do.
But it's a
Doesn't mean it has to be something that breaks.
Yeah. Okay, no,
But
that's
if the
great.
last 10 years, doesn't mean year nine, it says, guess what, I'm not going to last.
Well, and I like it also because we do not ever wanna be where we were with Arrowhead, and this is also, doesn't prevent that, but it's a preventative measure.
And whatever plan we put together, there are gonna be obstacles along the way. There are gonna be funding obstacles along the way, there are going to be things that get in our way that weren't on the plan. So nonetheless, the plan won't be, unmovable. So to your point, you know, while the roof is designed for this year, you know, we can hold it off another year until we get one more year of funding into it to help keep the fund solvent in case there is an emergency. So all the sorts of things that we need to take into consideration, but we wouldn't just hold on until it breaks.
Gotcha.
That's really what.
And that's a, I appreciate that. And I guess, Paul, you'll have more input at finance, so you're the one who wears both hats.
Yeah, the other part of this is really, you know, I think you showed maybe $1.5 million in the capital fund.
Right.
So for example, you know, that's not gonna take much, you know, that's not gonna help us get much done. Because most of the things that you just mentioned, like a roof replacement, is gone immediately. So, you know, we will be talking to the finance committee about how to, you know, put that fund into a place that allows us to start this type of a process and maintain it long term. So we'll be doing that on Wednesday, and then we'll come back to this group with a better plan, and then we'll also talk about those finances as well.
You have considered their budget already in anticipating starting the fund, the capital fund balance.
Yeah, right.
I have one thing before we move on,
Yes,
unless
okay.
anyone,
Yeah,
you
go
go
ahead.
first.
No.
You said?
Oh, okay, well, I didn't know if we were finished that.
Yeah, I think we're done with
Okay,
that,
okay.
yeah.
Every 3 or 4 years, the same topic rears its head, parking, student parking in high school. So I had told some community members that I will broach it at this meeting. 2 things, basically, I don't know where the communication should go, but what happens is every 3 or 4 years, a new set of parents comes in and they question it and they don't understand why we don't have parking for their child, and I get that, because they don't, why would they know that? Because they didn't care, because they didn't have this driver before. So I don't know if it's a little blurb can be put into to the high school happenings, or if there's a better way to communicate that. I mean, Dr. Grabney did put in, she did put in her latest Methacton high school happenings information about how you get a senior. But there might need to be a little blurb about why your junior and sophomore don't have spots. Speaking of that, I know you have talked probably before your time, but definitely in your time, of all the options that we have or don't have. And it was brought up that when was the last variance asked for by Worcester, or could we broach it with Worcester again? I don't know how doable that is, because somebody felt, and again, I don't know if this is true or not, that possibly some changeover there, that when was the last time did we ask, and if anybody could possibly ask again for a variance.
Variance for what?
For the, I say the word wrong every single time, impervious coverage. Agreed. So I just, you know, that, I don't know if there's anything, that we can broach at some point just to discuss ideas again, and or if not, we need to let these parents know, because like I said, every 3 or 4 years, this comes up. And it's a big topic right now.
Yeah, I can't tell you, the last time that we had a conversation about, impervious surface, here is when we went to get the quote for the estimate for the, storage facility, remember the storage
Yeah.
facility on the high school campus?
So that's what I said
But-
about 3 years ago, right?
It could be, yeah, about
Okay.
that many. But we weren't asking for a variance,
Okay.
we were just asking to put this structure on the property, which would then take, up some of our allowable, surface. So I guess the question is, I mean, if the committee wants me to look into that and also how to put additional parking for students, I can certainly do that, but we haven't done that for a long time.
I don't know how, I don't wanna speak for the
Probably 9 or 10
committee.
years ago, when I learned about how it works in the township.
Yeah, I mean,
I haven't gone since then.
I don't wanna speak for the committee. I tend to be the type of person that says, oh, this is the way it is, figure it out. And I don't mean that in a bad way, like, I just knew my child couldn't drive, like, until she's a senior. And when people ask me why, I say, well, there's only so many spots because of the township where we live. And that's how I expected it. I don't wanna speak for the whole committee. I mean, but I don't know if it's worth discussing or bringing to the table any thoughts of ideas to get any more spots. I know we talked about the lot to the right, but we didn't like that because you don't want students parking on gravel. People seem to think that Audubon's an option, but we all know Audubon's not gonna be there much longer, and we already have the tank here. Like, I think people think we're ignoring the problem. So I do think it is important to discuss it at some point in committee, if there's any possible alternatives. I know in my 6 years, we have had one pretty major conversation about it. And we talked about exactly, if you even got the permission, where would you put more parking? So, I don't know. I don't know how other people feel. I just know that it was brought, it is a concern because it comes up, as you know, every few years. And if Dr. Gravity's hasn't heard, I told people, I said, you gotta reach out because, you know.
I received one email
Okay.
today on the matter. I haven't had a chance to respond to
Right.
the parent, but, yeah, I wasn't aware that it was,
Yeah, and I'm one person, and I do think some kind of communication to just explain it to some parents is helpful, you know. Because the more new parents you get to have that have questions, it's probably important to address it.
yeah, I certainly hear what you're saying, and I'd love to be able to, completely, explain, but there's a number, as you said, there's a number of things I have to explain.
I know, it's not an easy blur.
Audubon.
Yes.
I mean,
For student requirement, the house has the buses. I mean, that's part of our contract.
There's housing, there's students, there's facilities.
there's all sorts of different,
But I think that's what Avery's point is if you had that public dialogue.
At least 300.
So maybe.
I don't know if that having here gets beyond really.
Yeah, I would say yes, but at least then we can say we have had the conversation. And we have addressed any issues. I mean, I do think it's worth just crossing all our Ts and making sure this is not something we want to, I shouldn't say invest in, but.
Yeah, I mean, there were suggestions about, access road back to the mill, we could bus going a different direction. I mean, I don't know if any of that's not doable, yeah, I know. But I'm just saying that.
No, absolutely, all the.
Scope of this campus, but that opportunity's come and gone.
And
50 years ago.
all the suggestions we have discussed in my 6 years, I just don't think people are aware of that.
I'm just not sure who people are to talk to, because I'm glad to meet with anyone to go over the matter, just.
Probably put it to bed kind of conversation. Let's not put a anytime you get stuff with vendors, it's all ours. I mean,
And
we
not- and
can't,
just
we
so
can't
that
wave, we can't wave a wand and create a parking
Well,
lot.
and I think
Junior doesn't get to drive.
and I think it's important though, I like that idea, because I do think people are under the impression that we don't care about their student being able to drive to school, and we definitely do care about their student driving to school. It's a beautiful campus, it's just limited for several reasons. And we know the reasons, but.
It's not beautiful to the left.
Right, well, it's only, right, the view.
It will be beautiful.
Yes,
So-
yes.
So I certainly can do that, thank you for the recommendation, I'll put that together, and, what I'll do is I'll share with the board, just make sure that.
And then the first thing, the note you put up, parking policy.
And like I said, if there's an
it.
issue, speak about it.
Something good.
I had one other thing that somebody asked me related to and I usually never ask about this stuff, the Polo Fields. I know that we talked at one point, I think, heard some of the committee at that point about some of the quality of the fields at Arcola. And some of them do get rented out. And the question that was given to me is, does any of that money go directly back into those fields? And I know that it doesn't, there isn't a fund for baseball field or football field or soccer. But the point is that some of those fields do get used more by outside agencies, and then the school field isn't as good. So, but I don't, I guess generically, is there any?
There's a rental of the high school field. It's put into this field replacement.
Okay.
Per the board policy, that's set that provision. We're not
We
walking
talk,
on-
we
No,
talk, we talk.
Yeah.
He's not talking, Joe.
Yeah.
I understand, I know he's talking about it, Arcola, that's the only one where the funds actually are designated for them. The rest just goes to a general fund, which cash is money when you use it, however it's necessary.
So I just don't know where we are on that Arcola Fields.
So the Arcola Fields, as an item that will be in the strategic plan, are in it, and again, okay, and, they were also added to the master plan as part of getting on timeline. The problem is, there's two issues, one, the quality of the service, and the actual, dimensions of the fields. But there's not a single field that's actually of the proper size associated with the play that it needs. So football, you can't have a football field, it's a good enough. You can practice on it. Soccer, it's not a soccer field. All the design is less than, the actual field, requirements. So the play cannot occur there. I mean, practicing, youth stuff probably, but that's part of it. And then obviously the quality,
And, because I know the baseball field is really nice, and, I mean, I only am familiar with the soccer, with lacrosse in the back, what's the
Well,
problem?
I understand.
I don't know.
I remember this is, it's when we start talking about rocks on the field.
Oh, yeah.
But,
Yeah.
but,
That's true.
Okay.
The fill.
that,
Okay,
Okay.
I'm asking, because I've only been
the
there for 1 year.
ironic thing is they stripped off all the good stuff. They took all the good stuff away when they built Skyview, and we lost, and then they.
well, that's what was said, okay?
Yeah.
I don't know if any of us were here watching
Okay.
the construction. but
I-
that was said.
10,000 square.
Yeah.
But in all fairness, that is the historical lore of that property, and it is certainly, evident to think that that's what actually happened based on its current condition. So with all that said, there's a number of items that you may not have seen in the master plan that are now going to be added, including those fields.
Take that back. Anything else?
But just on another note, that when we were talking about the field project at the high school, we were also talking about our goal at the same time. And the truth be told, I mean, you have to swallow a lot to make all that major investment in the fields and not into other things. So, I think, we as an administration and board at some point need to say, okay, when's the right next time to make an athletic investment?
And I don't disagree about the fields, I will just say, from my experience at Arcola, like, I am so impressed, like, our Arcola track goes to this invitational and pen relays. Not all middle school does that. I find our middle schools, you know, I think people have this idea it's gonna be like club or travel or whatever, and I mean, middle school is different than high school, but I'm pretty impressed as a parent. Like, I'm so impressed that they even make it work with trying to include as many children as they can by having white teams and green teams and core teams. Like, I'm not saying that's not about facilities, but I see quite a lot going on in our middle school sports that encourages children to participate, which is, I think, important. Yeah, I mean, I just, you know, I just have been, and I feel like a lot of our coaches, like, just the track, for example, I mean, the fact that they go to those events, not all middle schools do that, even in Montgomery County, you know, like, did that.
Thank you for recommending that, Sharon. Sure. Okay.
Time for courtesy before. Mr. Andrews?
Yes, good evening. Again, this evening you have some change orders on the agenda for providing water for the Arrowhead sprinkler system. Now, the sprinkler system, as designed as part of the preparation for the bid process back, I guess, 2 years ago, that called for an 8-inch pipe going to fire hydrants and the sprinkler system. And there's about a half dozen change orders that have surfaced here in the year 2022, with the total cost currently, I estimate, at over $450,000. And I think the thing is coming together piecemeal, you know, a year and a half into the project. And, you know, in the back of my mind, I wonder, something's not right, and there's been several mentions of low water pressure by the water company. And I'm thinking that, you know, someone planning things out wisely might have said a long time ago, well, how about if we give the water company $30,000 to have a more powerful pump? We'd get maybe a 15 times benefit for doing that. The thing has not gone well, and I think there are still obstacles. We still are expecting another change order for the mechanicals associated with the some part of the project, maybe the connecting the tank up. So the thing, and you know, when all is said and done, there's one pipe for the building water needs. There's one pipe for the 2 hydrants, and one pipe for the water to the storage tank. And it almost seems to me like, you know, we have a slew of pipes, and there might still be a chance to do things in a better way. On a totally separate issue, I used one of the boys' rooms at this high school over the weekend, and I encountered the thinnest toilet paper I've ever seen in my lifetime. And I think when it's thin, you use 3 or 4 times as much. So, you know, I wonder if we have the same type of toilet paper at Farina and at the schools. And maybe there should be some specifications on the toilet paper, and that's something for consideration by you know, whoever is in charge.
All right. Thank you, John. I'll make sure that is in the minutes. Mr. Rittenhouse.
Joe Rittenhouse, Lower Province. I have I think 3 related questions, but 2 are related to the same topic. One was related, I wasn't sure if this should be property or finance. I had a parent ask about the playground at Arrowhead. Again, I know that it came up in a previous committee meeting, and I think they were looking for clarification on accessibility to said playground. They had brought up a ramp of some kind for students with special needs or disability. And then the other 2 relate to transportation, specifically busing 5th graders on the same buses as the, I guess, 6th, 7th, or 8th graders is what they're talking about. And they said that there were some issues as far as behavior on these buses and what kind of, they're asking about what kind of disciplinary things are suggested. And they also said that there was an issue with certain older students bullying some of the younger students, and just kind of wanted to see if anything had been brought to the administration's attention about those things, and said that they would like to come to speak at the work session. So those are my comments. Thank you.
And the playground was Arrowhead, you said?
Arrowhead, yes.
Anybody have any closing comments? Anything you want to address? Okay. Motion to adjourn. At 12.
So they're gonna write up the toilet